Welcome to Recalculating America, a program dedicated to small business in America. Recalculating will help you, the American small business owner, build a new business or help you to grow your existing one. Each week, experts will give you useful information about starting your new business, and you will hear from professionals selected to help you grow your business. Your hosts are Don Mazzella and Dan Perkins. Don Mazzella is the editor-in-chief of the Small Business Digest and has many years of experience helping small businesses build and grow their businesses. Now he is sharing his ideas with you over the air. Dan Perkins is a registered investment advisor with 43 years' experience in managing money. He specializes in helping small business owners make their money work as hard as they do. Now, your host, Don Mazzella and Dan Perkins.
Tom Johnson is president and publisher of Set Aside Alert, and he is here to talk to us about a conference coming up for small businesses who are interested in government contracting and more. Welcome, Tom.
Hey, thank you. It's Tom. How are you?
I'm fine, thank you. Tell us a little bit about yourself, your company, and a website if you have one.
Sure. I am the president of Business Research Services, which is the publisher of Set Aside Alert. Set Aside Alert is a newsletter that focuses on the small business market in the federal government. So we have a newsletter and an information series that keeps small business owners up to date with federal contract opportunities, as well as advising them on how to team with other companies, how to find more information about the market, what opportunities are coming down the line that they're available to bid on, and so forth. So we've been doing this for 25 years now, working with small businesses all over the United States, helping them find and bid on federal government contracts.
Now, you have a website for our entrepreneurs?
Yes, I do. It's www.setasidealert.com. And I might take a minute to explain set aside. In the federal government, there are special opportunities for small businesses, and we call these set-aside contracts, in that the opportunity is set aside so that only small businesses are eligible to bid. Large businesses are not accepted on these contracts. And amongst the small business bidders, there are special categories for women-owned businesses, service-disabled veteran-owned businesses, minority-owned businesses, and what we call HUBzone, which is historically underutilized business or areas of high unemployment. But 80% of the set-asides are available for any small business. So got to keep those categories in mind when you're looking at the federal output.
Well, I'm not trying to be a smart aleck when I asked you the question I want to ask you. But
Okay.
are there opportunities for just plain old white people to apply?
Absolutely. And that's what I'm saying. Those 80% of the set-asides are for any small business. You may be minority, you may be woman-owned, you may be a Caucasian guy. It doesn't matter as long as you're a small business under the various standards. Usually in the federal market, small businesses are any manufacturing or product firm with fewer than 500 employees, and any services firm that has, depending on what category, if you're in information technology, I believe the current criteria is anything under $27.5 million in revenue. Some of the categories are a lower threshold than that. So, yeah, a wide variety of small businesses are eligible and can bid on these small business set-asides.
Tom, we had a guest on a recent program who was an entrepreneur who was trying to help specifically women get involved in bidding, and she indicated there's about $17 billion of contracts in this set-aside area that you're talking about. But as we pursued the conversation with her, and we went back to clarify it again to make sure we understood what she was saying. She's saying that the average female-owned small business will spend about $106,000 over the first 18 months to get an opportunity to bid on the contract. Seems like a lot of money, Tom.
Well, that's true. And the person you were talking to was Lourdes Martin Rosa, who I also know from being out on the speaking circuit, where she is often also present at the meetings that I speak at. Her the initial number that she was talking about there, the 7 billion, I think, was what she was reporting on what goes to women-owned small businesses right now. Actually, there is over $90 billion worth of government contracts available for small businesses. The total federal government procurement is about $450 billion, and so about $90 billion of that is for small businesses. Women-owned is part of that, and I think that's the $17 billion she was talking about. But, once again, if we go back to the general category of small business, it's much wider. Now, the $106,000 figure she was reporting on was a study done by American Express Open, who is a contractor or prime contractor that she works with. And that study was done a couple of years ago. And yes, a lot of companies, that's the average amount that would be spent, not necessarily in cash out of pocket, but in time and energy in winning that first contract. And that was actually a survey they did. There are certainly opportunities that can be won with less effort, but it oftentimes requires a fair amount of research to figure out where those opportunities are and pluck out the most likely. So in any case, and part of what she was saying was that if you're going to get into the federal market, you need to spend some time figuring out how it works. And it does work a little bit differently than commercial. It does work. It's even different than state and local government. So.
Yeah, I agree. I just was so, we're all about, on this particular show, we're all about small business, helping entrepreneurs establish a small business and try and grow it. And I was so blown away by that number. I mean, I think about a woman who's maybe she's married and her husband's working full time and she's got a couple of kids and maybe she's been working part time at the Walmart or whatever, and she would really like to have her own business. It would seem to me that the kind of money we're talking about would be out of the reach of an awful lot of people.
Potentially that's true. The way I look at it, guys, is that in terms of small business, the federal government is not the place you want to go first. It's a bit complex. It's a kind of a situation where if you're starting up a small business, now is not time to go federal. Once you're established, you've got commercial contracts under your belt. You're doing work for commercial clients. That's the time to begin to look at the federal government as an opportunity to grow your business. And so, yeah, it takes time and effort, and it values out at $106,000 perhaps. But a chunk of that is you and your salespeople and your business development people researching. So when you get into it, you're getting in with a running start.
Tom, let me tell you, I think that was some of the best advice we've heard on this show in a long time.
Well, thank you.
Don't start with the federal government because it's tough enough to succeed as a small business. Dealing with the bureaucracy of the federal government as a new business person could be so daunting and so debilitating that you give up your desire to want to own a business. Let me move on.
Question.
Yeah. So thank you for that. That was very important. You said that.
Yeah. Just a little more background I might mention.
Sure.
I do a fair amount of speaking on this. I do an annual presentation at the National 8A convention, and oftentimes in the past for the HUBzone people, and every month or two here in the D.C. area as part of federal sales boot camps and other things. Plus, we sponsor workshops here on subcontracting and teaming agreements and some of the ins and outs of the government regulations, mentor protege program, and yeah, it's the kind of situation where you don't go in there first. You get your feet on the ground. You grow your business a bit. Maybe you got 10 people, or maybe you're doing $2 million a year in revenue. That's the time to start thinking about what's the government got for me.
I get one more question, then we'll go to Don. If I can figure out how to say this, are there parts? It almost doesn't make sense what I'm about to say, but I'll say it anyway. Are there parts of the government that are underserved that create an opportunity for small business?
Interesting question. I'm chewing on that a little bit. I think I would have to say that virtually every part of the government is going to be a competitive environment, and there's no situations I can think of offhand unless you have something very unique that you've developed or that only you can do, that government agency will need. Now, government, there's all kinds of government agencies, and they need anything and everything that any other Fortune 500 company or state and local government would need. They don't need retail clothing stores or barbershops so much, although they do use that a little bit. It's the kind of things that a big company would be buying. So you have to be in that market, and it's competitive. And unless you've got something extremely unique, you're going to be up against competition.
Okay, so let me turn it over to my partner, see what he thinks.
Mm-hmm. Well, Tom, I'd like for you to explain a little more to our audience what you do and why I think your efforts are so important if you want to go into the government arena.
Yeah, thank you. Our service is a two-part service. We have a daily email that sends a quick summary, easy to review, on every new set-aside opportunity that was published as of 1 o'clock that morning by the federal agencies. They put a file out at 1 a.m., and all of the people in the business that I'm in draw on that same repository. But we feel we provide something a little bit unique, and that is that we summarize those opportunities in a quick read format, so you can scan and check it out in less than 5 minutes. A lot of people will spend an hour in what we call FedBizOps, which is the single place for government to post its opportunities. And we can bring that down to 5 minutes. If there's something there that you find is interesting and exciting, we link you right to the opportunity so you can get started on your capture. So that's part one of our service. That's daily. Every 2 weeks, we follow up with an email. It's 12 pages long. It has information about regulations. It's kind of a training tool, educational tool for small businesses who are looking at this market, and for small businesses who have been in the market and trying to catch up with new regulations that are out there. It also has a calendar of events like the one we're going to talk about in a few minutes, and it has lists of companies that are winning contracts. So you can go out and find people in your area or in your industry that have won a couple of contracts, and you can call them up and say, hey, man, I'm really trying to figure out if this is for me, or I'm in this thing and I'd like to subcontract with you, take part of the workload off of you, or share workloads and that kind of thing. And in the federal environment, teaming and subcontracting is very common. So, a lot of the federal opportunities are so large that no one small business can do them. And there's a lot of team effort involved.
Well, Tom, tell us a little bit about your upcoming conference.
Okay, the conference is actually it's the 16th year that the Department of Energy is holding its annual small business event. DOE, the Department of Energy, as well as the Department of Veterans Affairs, conduct two very good large-scale conferences annually. The VA's is usually in November. I don't remember exactly what the date is coming up. This DOE one is generally in May. and it's going to be in Kansas City on May 16th through 18th at the Sheraton down there at Crown Center. It will bring together a large number of the government officials, what we call them program managers, the people who actually have the jobs that they're looking to contract out, along with the contracting officers who are more the technicians that get the bids in place and evaluate the offers. So both of those kinds of people will be at this conference, along with, they say, as many as 800 different agency, small business, large business people interacting, networking, learning from each other. The DOE one, as I said, is the 16th. The VA, I think, is at least 6 years in process. GSA used to do one, and I don't think they've started that back up yet. But these are really good places to not only meet, a contracting official from the Department of Energy. It will be a place to meet all of their prime contractors, a lot of the small businesses that work for them. I think there's over 100 businesses that will be exhibiting there, and they're looking for subs as well as looking for opportunities of their own. When DOE holds its conference, a large portion of the DOE budget goes to their laboratories, and the laboratories are run by generally large businesses, Lockheed or University of California. They include places like Sandia, Fermilab, Idaho National Engineering Lab, Jet Propulsion Lab. So we've got this network of labs, and all the labs will be at this DOE event in Kansas City. So it's the advantage is that you can go to one place and you can meet a variety of people. You can learn what they are in need of. You can talk to other people who are at your same stage of development in the marketplace and work with them. And you go home with a whole lot of information that would otherwise take you 2 years to put together, frankly.
Does your company sponsor this conference?
Not in this case, no. We do have workshop stuff, as I mentioned, but we've been in this game so long that many of the agencies know us well as reaching out to small business, so they work with us to help them spread the word. And so in the case of DOE, we're actually just working with them to provide information and connections for people.
So when we, I'm sorry, go ahead, Don.
No, I was just going to ask, when you go to one of these events, what should you be looking for, and what should you present as a small business?
Great questions, Don. First of all, you need to start before you go to the event and check out that agency and see what that agency does and think about how your product or service is going to be of value to them and helping them do their mission. When you get there, you need to have in hand what we refer to as a capability statement, and it's a one-pager. If you look out on the internet, Google capability statement, you'll find a number of people posted their own statements out there, but also kind of a template for you to develop one for yourself. And so it should cover all the contact information for your company, of course, but also what industries are you in and what's your DUNS number and what's your cage code, and are you small business, are you minority owned, are you women owned, are you all of the above. Try and put on there some short descriptions of some of the work you've done. We call it past performance or prior experience. And, a couple of key things that you think will attract the eye of a government agency who might have a need for that particular product or service. And so that capability statement, got to be in your hand along with your business card when you get there. So those are things to do in advance. Once you're there, go over the agenda real well, go over the exhibitors list real well, decide who you really need to see while you're there. And then plan to attend all of the events. There'll be some luncheons and dinners and receptions and cocktail parties, who knows what else. But those are the places to continue that networking. You'll be pooped out at the end of the day, but if you're going to be there and you're going to spend the money to go, it's very worthwhile. The registration cost, by the way, is $379 for the conference, and of course you got your travel and your hotel and whatever else in addition. So you want to make sure that you're spending that money in a worthwhile fashion.
Tom, let me ask you one more question. We're just about out of time. I know this is probably going to sound strange to say it, but this is the only way I can think of it. Are there government contracts that go unawarded?
Yes, although it's typically because somebody in the contracting side made an error somewhere along the line, and they've either had to withdraw it or, once in a while, no bids, and they'll essentially what happens, oftentimes, perhaps it's a woman-owned set-aside, but no woman-owned companies respond, or only one response. They have to have at least two. The rule of two says that there have to be at least two companies of that category who are responsible and who will be responsive to the bid. And if they only get one bid, then they've got to withdraw it and start over again. And maybe they spread it to all small businesses, or maybe they open it to large businesses as well.
Interesting.
Yeah, it doesn't happen real often, though, I'll readily say.
There's plenty of work to go around. Well, Tom, it's been a pleasure having you on the show. It's been a pleasure having you on the show, and we look forward to coming back and talk to you about some other developments in government contracting. And thanks for joining us.
Anytime. Yep, thank you.
Now we have a word from our sponsor.
Hate your old fax machine? You can now fax through email. Simply write an email, attach the document, and send. Works with all major email providers. Get rid of the noisy and expensive old fax machine and try Biscom's Cloud Fax. Our solutions are great for businesses of all sizes. Visit Biscom.com for your free trial. That's BISCOM.com.
Dan Perkins here for Songs and Stories for Soldiers with your Veterans Tip of the Day. Did you know that the suicide rate for women vets is 12 times that of their sisters in civilian life? Did you know that 1 in 4 women vets feel uncomfortable about talking to people about their mental health issues? Did you know almost 600,000 women vets in America are suffering from PTSD? It's time to help. It's time for all of us to encourage our sisters, mothers, and wives to get help by contacting their local VA hospital, clinic, or community-based health care center. So if you know a woman vet that is suffering, go to va.gov and find their nearest VA facility. This has been Dan Perkins of Songs and Stories for Soldiers.us with your Veterans Tip of the Day.
Welcome back to Recalculating, a program designed to help you be successful.
Welcome back. This is Dan Perkins, and joining us right now is Mike. And Mike, pronounce your last name?
Hoefflinger.
Hoefflinger. He is, until recently, he was Facebook's global marketing chief, and he's here to talk to us about transforming Facebook from special social media upstarts in the world of financial a powerhouse. And you have a new book coming out, as I understand.
I do. It's called Becoming Facebook. It's available now in all the formats that you like, whether it's a hardcover or an ebook or an audiobook. And it's the story of what's happened since the movie, if you will.
Okay.
And that was really an incredible rise to prominence.
So tell us a little bit about yourself and what you did or do and what you're doing now.
Well, I'm a 25-year veteran of Silicon Valley. I started actually as an engineer in the days when microprocessors were coming up. I worked at Intel at that time, and then eventually for Andy Grove, and also ran the Intel Inside program, the if you remember, and eventually moved from doing that kind of marketing to doing marketing for all of Facebook's advertising business globally. And spent almost 7 years at Facebook as they were going through their, crucial coming of age period. That was a a time when they, multiplied their annual revenue by 100 times as they grew up between the beginning of 2009 and the end of last year. So an amazing rise to prominence in our lives as people and users, and to becoming, what will this year be a $30+ billion a year advertising juggernaut.
It's fascinating, the Facebook story, and I feel honored to have an opportunity to talk to somebody who was there. But it's Facebook, like some of the other social media, has come under a significant amount of criticism, and it seems like the criticism is building as to some of their practices and who they allow to use the social media space, what can be said in the social media space. What's going on there?
Well, as you said, Facebook, which of course grew up and started as social media over the last 5 years, has become even much more than that, as they have, gone from just being Facebook to also having acquired Instagram, to also having acquired WhatsApp, which is a messaging tool, and having grown their own Facebook Messenger. So they now have 4 communication tools that are in the top 6 communication tools that the world uses. Some of them, Facebook, we heard just yesterday, is now serving 1.94 billion people a month. And over the last decade, since the introduction of their news feed, they've become incredibly influential in our lives. In developed countries, people use Facebook, Instagram, those kinds of products from Facebook an hour a day. They've become our lens on the world. As the world and information has gotten more complicated, we rely on our friends and the connections that we've made on Facebook to help us understand the world. And with that, that incredible prominence that Facebook has in our lives comes the responsibility to keep, things like the news feed clean and well lit, to have it be the things that we care about, to not feel that the information that we see there, it may be misleading us. And those are the kinds of issues that are now the most important conversation for Facebook. Maybe over the period of the last 7 or 8 years, there were moments when the most important thing for Facebook was to make sure that they continue to actually grow from, just having 100 million users to having much more than that. Nowadays, Zuckerberg needs to make sure, Mark Zuckerberg, the CEO of Facebook, needs to make sure that he is concentrating on keeping the news feed very trustworthy, to make sure that if there are fake news items and manipulators out there, that he identifies those, that he allows us to understand what information is disputed, and to eventually, I would not be surprised to see Facebook literally begin to eliminate those kinds of pieces of information from the news feed very actively. So those are some things that they're facing now.
Do you think it's possible that I know that there are some people who openly say they no longer get their news, whatever that means, from the major networks, that they get it from Twitter or the TMZ or Facebook or whoever. Do you think that Zuckerberg thinks that Facebook is part of what used to be called the fourth estate?
I don't think that he thinks that, which is why we have not seen Facebook hire, what you might call an editor, right? Which is a person whose job it is to shape the news that we see, right? The New York Times' editor, their job is to select the front page story, to select what is written and how it's written about. What I think Facebook does so supremely well is take all the sources of information in the world, whether it might be a New York Times or maybe it's something much nichier, or a little bit edgier, like you mentioned, TMZ or a BuzzFeed or Vice Media, as well as information and points of view from your friends, and really effectively presents that information to you, right? Facebook is not the one writing the story. They are just making sure that when the New York Times writes an article, that and people like that article, people are sharing that article, especially my friends, that I see that article. So there's a big difference between originating content and making it easier for me to find content that's important and valuable in my life.
Do you think that there is a great similarity between Facebook and Drudge, based on what you just said?
I don't think so, because Drudge I think of still as original reporting, and forget about what you may think about their bias or are not bias. But I think they are originating content, right? What Facebook is doing is asking itself, of the 100 things that are happening, to the people and things that I've connected to on Facebook, which 15 things would I find most interesting, right? And I'm not connected to Drudge on Facebook, so I don't necessarily see them. But there's lots of people that really do like Drudge, and then they will be shown that.
I think recent numbers I saw that they were the largest website in terms of hits, over 1 billion a month. But I want to move on. We're about small business, so tell us about your book and how our listeners, entrepreneurs, small business people, can benefit from your book.
Yeah, the core of the book, of course, is the story about the big things that happened, in the time between when Facebook was just an upstart. They weren't even the leading social network yet, and, to becoming, an incredibly financially strong, very powerful, very well-loved business. And the core of the book are 10 chapters that chronicle those challenges, but maybe most importantly, identify the lessons that all of us can learn from them, whether we're running a small business, whether we're just trying to build our career, maybe we're building a product for a larger business, really trying to learn from Mark Zuckerberg and his leadership team what it takes to build a great product for consumers, right? Having to simplify something is the great lesson, in terms of building products that consumers love. You want to build a great business? Democratize a function for customers of all sizes. You want to make sure that you don't get disrupted by a competitor? See if you can disrupt yourself first. You want to win the talent wars? Concentrate on people's strengths and fit those to their jobs and practically ignore weaknesses. Those are just some of the lessons that I think we can take away from this unprecedented rise that Facebook has had.
Is it possible that Facebook is peaking?
I think, what's fascinating about having lived in Silicon Valley, for a quarter century now, is that there's no such thing as a guarantee of permanent success. And I, of course, used to work for Intel. I worked for Andy Grove, who's one of the great CEOs that Silicon Valley has ever seen. Intel itself is not as powerful in the world, not as well loved in the world as it used to be 15 years ago.
Right.
And so for folks like Mark Zuckerberg, who really, we may think of him as young, but he's a student of the history of technology, of business. He pays attention to, again, back to Andy Grove, a famous book called The Paranoid Survive, which is kind of the management Bible here in Silicon Valley. Mark may be 50 years younger than Andy would be. Unfortunately, passed away last year. But he really loves to be a student of those lessons, right? And so he is constantly trying to think about, are we building the best products? Are we doing a great job of this mission of making the world more open and connected? Is there something else we need to be doing? Is there some way I need to protect myself against some sort of a disruption? We look at him and he buys something like Oculus VR, which is a virtual reality headset company, and we may look at it and wonder why in God's name is he doing that? But he's already thinking 5 to 10 years ahead, when the phone that we so love may be in our pocket and we are wearing glasses that are augmenting the world around us with information. And Mark wants to be sure that Facebook can play in that universe. So, success is never permanent in Silicon Valley. But I think in Zuckerberg, they have a CEO who is precisely that paranoid about the future and will make every move possible to keep Facebook, from being a product we no longer care about.
You raised a real interesting point to me, and that is vision. As a small business person, maybe sometimes we become so bogged down on the day-to-day mundane things that need to be done and are important that as an entrepreneur, we don't spend enough time thinking about what is the future of my business? Where is it going to go? SBA says that about 50% of the businesses started today will disappear in 5 years. And listening to what you were saying about Mark and other people who have great vision, is it something that people are born with? Can they be trained to be visionaries? What do you think?
I think there is a little bit of an instinct, but that instinct comes from caring about something, a particular customer, a particular industry, a particular product, more than anyone else. And it's actually the closing lesson of the 10 major lessons in the book is how can a tiny company, relatively speaking, like Facebook, beat what at the time were giant competitors in consumer technology like Google and Microsoft. And they can do that because they understand something better about people and they care more about something than other people do. And from those two things can come vision. It's not just something where, poof, you're simply gifted with the ability to see the future. If you understand your customers better, if you know something that nobody else knows, if you care more about being the best at that thing that you do, you will see around corners better than your competition. So I think some of it you cannot coach, but as much as we can't be Mark Zuckerberg, I think we can learn from how he both protects Facebook on a daily basis. You mentioned the work that we have to get done today. Mark is a doer, right? He actually doesn't love to talk, so he does both of these things well. And if we pay attention, we can learn these lessons, even if we do something much, much, much smaller than Facebook.
Now, your book is titled 10 Challenges That Define the Company. And they all can't be equal in weight. Is there a number one?
Hard to choose. I think in one of the chapters I talk about how can you find your inner Zuck, because we can't be Mark, but we can learn from him. And I think what has defined Mark's success, he's now 13 years of, pursuing Facebook's mission, is that he always prefers doing to what I would call dogma or talking. Another way that the engineers at Facebook might say this to each other is that computer code, settles arguments. So instead of yelling at each other across the table or guessing how something might work or whether consumers would like this thing or that thing, build it. See what the reaction is of people. Understand how they're using it. Improve the product based on that information. We were just talking about how important Facebook Newsfeed is. Facebook Newsfeed came along 11 years ago because Facebook detected that in that early phase before Newsfeed, people would jump around other people's profile to see what was going on with them. And it was just an endless clicking. And introducing the Newsfeed created a personal newspaper that made that much easier for people. So if there's only one thing to take away from how Zuckerberg works or how Facebook works, even today, is that doing is much better than dogma, talking, guessing. Right? Really focus on building something and adjusting over time.
Don.
Mike, my question is, what made you decide to go? You were, if I heard correctly, working for Intel. What made you decide to go to Facebook? What did you see?
At the time, this was roughly 2008. At the time, I was managing the Intel Inside program globally, which is a very, very large global advertising program, billions of dollars. And one of our partners that was up and coming at the time was Facebook. They were a small internet kind of advertising provider. But you could see that they understood things about people because how much people loved the service that would allow you as an advertiser to target very effectively, to ask yourself, who are the people that I'm really trying to talk to? Where can I find them? How can I understand them? And how can I communicate with them in a medium that they really like, Facebook, and especially these days, also in mobile. 2008 was a year after the iPhone came along. We were just in the early days of this mobile transition. So I saw an advertising tool that I thought could be very effective and could be even more effective in the medium that was up and coming, which is our mobile phone. And that was kind of my bet. And I think, it worked out, I think, for Facebook and for me personally even much better than I could have forecast, but is actually at the heart of, I think, why Facebook is so relevant to your listeners, right? As a small business, there's nothing more important than efficiently being able to find the customers that you want to communicate to and communicate with them even in a tool as large as Facebook. And it is Facebook's ability to do that well for 5 million advertising customers around the world that is the reason that they are so big.
Well, now, we know why you came, but if I'm correct, you're no longer with Facebook. What made you decide to leave?
I left Facebook a couple of years ago. At that point, I had been at the company almost 7 years. We had built, very large, fantastic teams made up of great people that handled the marketing for the advertising business all around the world to customers of all different sizes. And I had come to a point where I had been in Silicon Valley for 25 years and, felt that I had finished an important chapter of, participating in Facebook's rise and wanted to see if I could make time for some things I had never been able to do. And those things include playing a bigger role in the kind of the entrepreneurial ecosystem here in Silicon Valley. I'm part of a seed stage venture capital firm now. I'm also an advisor to companies and also write this book, especially about this Facebook story, which I thought was easily the best story that hadn't been written down in the last 7, 8, 9, 10 years here in Silicon Valley, and gave me an opportunity to make sure that what happened here was captured and that history doesn't think of it as an accident, but that it was a very, very conscious process of a bunch of very smart people working hard to build a great product.
Would you go back into a semi-corporate environment and to do another Facebook-like expansion?
Well, it can be difficult to plan for something that amazing to happen in your career. I was so unbelievably fortunate to be at Intel, in the PC revolution, to be at Facebook in the mobile revolution. Those are borderline impossible to plan well. Companies that were led by some of the great leaders, we may ever see in business. So they're hard to find. But I have a real love affair as a builder, a marketer, with Silicon Valley and its constant construction of the future. It's kind of creative destruction, if you will, of the things of the past being superseded by new things. So. I think that love affair will never go away, and so it is possible that maybe I'll have an opportunity to be a part of another thing over time. In the meantime, I really do enjoy the process of being a part of the entrepreneurial community and sharing these lessons, with folks that are building, their own product and company. And are waking up every morning and doing what Zuckerberg does every morning, which is to push their fear of failure to the background and take on, building something new for all of us. And that is, why entrepreneurs, whether it's here or all across the world, are really heroes, right, in our modern society.
Well, we've got just about a minute to go, and I wanted to ask one final question. Mike, how did the 7-year experience at Facebook change you as a person? I
think the intensity, when something like this happens, when you're a part of an Intel as it is growing up and becoming incredibly important in the world, or a Facebook as it is growing up and becoming important in the world, you have a sense of great responsibility to the teams around you and to the leaders of those organizations, whether it is an Andy Grove at Intel or Mark Zuckerberg at Facebook. Maybe it's leaders like a Jeff Bezos at Amazon and on and on. You feel a great sense of responsibility to do the absolute very best you can to make their vision come to pass. And I think, just getting up every day and finding the intensity to do justice to the opportunity that you have. I think it makes you very focused. I think it makes you move fast. I think it forces you to put fear in the background. And what was fascinating about Facebook, of course, it's an internet and a mobile-based service as opposed to a piece of hardware like Intel. So the speed with which you're able to move to understand how people are using the product to improve the product, was the greatest speed that I've ever encountered in my career. And I think finding ways to make sure that you yourself, as an employee, a manager, a leader, are getting better at moving faster, thinking faster, moving more fluidly, paying more attention to what you learn from your customers was sharpened even more at Facebook than it was in my time at Intel before that.
Mike, thank you for your time. The name of your book is Becoming Facebook, the 10 Challenges that Define the Company, that is disrupting what we believe. I'm sorry. Give me the title.
It's Becoming Facebook, the 10 Challenges that Define the Company that's Disrupting the World.
Okay. All right. Super. Thank you for joining us. And we'll be right back after these messages from our sponsor.
Thank you very much.
Hate your old fax machine? You can now fax through email. Simply write an email, attach the document, and send. Works with all major email providers. Get rid of the noisy and expensive old fax machine and try Biscom's Cloud Fax. Our solutions are great for businesses of all sizes. Visit Biscom.com for your free trial. That's BISCOM.com.
Dan Perkins here with your Recalculating Small Business Tip of the Day. Did you know that a candle can be an energy saver for home and office? An old-fashioned candle can be a new-fashioned energy saver and at the same time provide a warm glow to any home office. Adding a candle seems like a silly thing to do, but it can help check for drafts. You can use the candle to test if new windows are needed. Here's how. First, take a roll of blue painter's tape and tear off pieces and put them on your left arm. Pass the candle around the opening and mark the spots around each window and door where the candle flame flickers. When you have finished your test, step back and see if you have tape around all of the window or only one side. The more tape you have on the window, the more money you will save by replacing those windows and doors. Check out recalculating.biz for more useful small business suggestions. This has been Dan Perkins with your Small Business Tip of the Day.
Welcome back to Recalculating, a program designed to help you be successful. Now it's time for Money in Motion. Dan Perkins is our resident expert in making the money you earn work as hard as you do. Here is Dan Perkins.
Well, Don, as we're sitting here looking today, we're waiting to see if the House is going to pass the Republican health care reform bill. We don't know whether it's passed. It is interesting to see how quickly the Congress turned after what people are calling the fiasco of 4 weeks ago. I've been reading a little bit about the bill. They're taking out the tax penalties. They're spinning off catastrophic illness and pre-existing conditions. I don't know how they're going to pay for that, but it was one of the things that drove up the premium so dramatically under Obamacare, is that the young people were paying for sick people with pre-existing conditions and the elderly. So I don't know. So we should hopefully hear something today. Tax bill appears to be moving. Right now, the story on the Hill is that the president wants to take the top corporate tax bracket down from 35% to 15%. He wants to have a special repatriation of close to, some estimate, $3 trillion of foreign earnings held overseas. Tim Cook, this week, when he announced Apple's earnings, said that Apple has almost $250 billion in cash overseas, and that if he got a favorable tax rate, he would bring it back to the United States, probably increase the dividend or a one-time payout to shareholders and invest more money in the United States. So tax is going to be important. We also had a week or so ago, in fact, we've got a number tomorrow morning on unemployment. The ADT number came out on Wednesday at about 283,000 jobs, big number. Whether or not the government will follow, we don't know yet. We won't know tomorrow morning. But what the most important number was that the first shot at first quarter GDP showed that the GDP in the country grew by about 0.75%. Not real good. I'm not surprised, because typically in the last year of a presidential campaign, the incumbent, whether he or she is running for their own job or to cement the opportunity of their party candidate to win, the government and will use everything possible to try and make the economy look as good as it can. So we had a pretty good fourth quarter, but we're having a terrible first quarter. Now the question becomes, will we have a recession this year? The Federal Reserve yesterday said that they were not going to raise interest rates, although they thought that the economy would recover more in the latter half of the year. I want to help our listeners understand specifically about the market reaction. The stock market is a leading indicator, meaning it tells us what things are going to look like 6 to 12 months down the road. And so the fact that the stock market continues to rise, even though it appears we're having a sluggish first quarter, the market's telling you that the second half of the year is going to be much better than the first half of the year. And that kind of makes sense. However, typically, again, as we go back to the reference of first years, it's not uncommon for the first year to be a recession for the whole year. So if the stock market is, in fact, a precursor or a leading indicator of what's going to happen 6 to 12 months down the road, then the economy is probably going to come back faster than what people were anticipating. So we could see more job growth. Former Fed Chairman Bernanke earlier this week indicated that he thought that while the economy had the potential to grow at 3%, he said he didn't think that was going to happen this year. It's amazing we're thinking in terms of 3% growth. 3% growth is not robust growth. 4 would be, or more. So we never hit 4 in the entire 8 years of Barack Obama. So what's happening, Don, is that people are getting a little nervous. They're not sure that they want to spend that $3 trillion. So a lot will happen. Healthcare is important, but taxes will be extremely important. And if we get a tax bill, and the last report I saw is that it's going to be a simplified tax. Now, I find it hard to believe that this is going to happen, and you can certainly give your opinion. The last piece that I saw is that the only 2 loopholes that were going to remain in the new tax bill was the deduction for mortgage interest and charitable contributions. Everything else is gone. Everything, all the deductions in the past are gone. And the rationale is that by lowering both the corporate and the individual tax rate, you will have more money. So you do not need these, quote, incentives, by and large, to offset your tax liability. Now, I don't know whether that's going to happen. I mean, the idea that we could have a tax law that's 1 page almost boggles my mind. It would be a great way to drain the swamp of the IRS, because there would be no need for the people. But I don't know. I think if we got a tax law that was that simple, wow, I think this economy could go crazy. So I think the market's cautious at the moment. It's flirting with new highs, but only marginally. We could see some volatility. There's an old saying, sell in May and go away. And so we're in May. The market is kind of sluggish. So under the old axiom, sell in May and go away till about October. Don't know whether that's going to be true. There are a couple of things that could really roar this economy and the markets, and that would be both a tax bill and a health care bill. And that's my 2 cents worth.
A word from our sponsors is always in good order.
Dan Perkins here with your Recalculating Small Business Tip of the Day. How important is paint to a painter? Current estimates are that America has 450,000 house painters, and almost all of them are small businesses. The cost of paint is going up, so paint is a large expense for the painting contractor. The cost of the paint can be as much as 15% of the price of the job. Skimping on the paint may cost you in the long run. Using a lower quality paint may make your price more competitive, but the client may not like the results a year or two down the road, and that could cost you more than you think. Like many things, you can buy lower quality paint that doesn't hold up, but the lower price could cost you a referral and could damage your reputation. So if you're a house painter, think about spending a little more on the paint you buy. You will grow your business, your reputation, and spread joy all around the house. Check out recalculating.biz for more useful small business suggestions. This has been Dan Perkins with your Small Business Tip of the Day.
Welcome back to Recalculating, a program designed to help you be successful.
Well, Dan, for our listeners, that's just a tip-off of a new program that's appearing in stations across the nation, anchored by our own Dan Perkins, and it sounded pretty good, Dan. What do you think?
I thought it sounded pretty good too. What I like about it is that we're trying to help the small business with some observations, and I think that this particular tip is reflective of what's going on with so many big box stores closing, and personnel cutbacks and the ones that are remaining, so that customer service is really hard to find. I was in with my wife this past weekend in a Home Depot in Fort Myers, Florida. I looked and looked and looked, could not find anybody on the floor, and they weren't there. So it's if you can't find anybody to help you, you're going to move on. And I moved on. I mean, I don't know where everything is in that store. I was looking for somebody to tell me where stuff was. There was nobody around, and I can't believe there's nobody in the store. So they're all in the break room or whatever, but they weren't around to help me, and very frustrating.
Well, you're better off than we are here in North Bergen. There, you can't find anybody who speaks English. And that's
there you go.
But anyway, with that note,
Dan Perkins here with your Recalculating Small Business Tip of the Day. Have you ever tried to find someone to help you in a big box store? Your time is valuable, and if you have a question, you need someone to give you an answer. Do you find yourself wandering from aisle to aisle trying to find someone to help you? Finding help is a problem in almost every big box store chain, regardless of what they're selling: TVs, clothes, even nuts and bolts. Greater customer service can differentiate a small business from a big box competitor. When customers can't find someone to help them, they take their frustration out on the store. They are angry. A smart small business owner makes it a point to be attentive, helpful, and polite. May I help you? Are the sweet words of success. Check out recalculating.biz for more useful small business suggestions. This has been Dan Perkins with your Small Business Tip of the Day.
Welcome back to Recalculating.
that's our last word for today, and hopefully our audience learned a lot today. I know I did, and I hope you did as well. Until next time, this is Don Mazzella.
And this is Dan Perkins, and thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next week.
Thank you for joining us on Recalculating. We hope the information you received on today's show was helpful to you in starting and growing your business. Please go to our website, recalculating.biz, for past shows and special offers. And until next time, remember, if you grow, we grow. Join us next week for more helpful ideas to make your business a great success.